It's similar to meeting a stranger and asking for their advice. This podcast dives into the lives of everyday people through struggle and growth, sharing philosophies and principles in hopes that we can be inspired to live a more meaningful and fulfilling life. My name is NickyAdopt, and this is the Next Adventure Podcast. Hi, so today I'm talking about the creative process behind making my podcast, the Next Adventure Podcast. To understand the why I created this podcast, we need to go back to 2021 where I created my documentary, Now That I'm 25. The purpose of creating that documentary was I wanted to find comfort in knowing that I was not alone in struggling, and I brought together my friends who are all 25 and asked them questions based on if you got your life together, basically. And what I learned from that is everyone is struggling, and this is all part of growing up. In turn, it helped me find the comfort that I was looking for. Taking inspiration from Now That I'm 25, I just want to carry on the conversation with new people and learn new things, which is why I thought the podcast would be a great idea for me to just carry on what I love to do, which is to talk to people and also to bring forth the great message of telling people in my generation that, you know what, you're not alone. Now we'll move on to the mood, tone, rundown of the podcast and also the set design, which are based off these two scenarios. Picture yourself standing around a smoking corner and everyone is just chilling, it's the silence of the night, and out of nowhere someone starts to curse, gee, bye. And everybody's like, whoa, what happened? And then they start asking a question: why does my boss not like me? Why is work so hard? Why is, we're not making enough money? And then from there, a conversation starts and it ends off with, you know what, that's just life, you got this, and they leave. The second scenario is, think of after hours at a bus stop. Again, it's quiet, you hear the traffic going on, and then suddenly someone comes in distress. They sit down on the chair, they're like, why is the world doing this to me? Why is it so hard? Why is it so and so? You ask them, are you okay? And from there, conversation starts. In that very short period of time, the bus comes and they have to leave, and they tell you like it's okay. Life is hard, but you got this, and they leave. Which is how I came up with the rundown of the podcast, where the guests or my friends would come on as a stranger towards the audience and, answer a very deep question. From there, we'll give them the context on who they are, and we'll just start talking about things in life. From there, we'll end off with a little bit of motivation before they leave, and that's the rundown basically. For the set design, again, I was looking back at these images thinking I wanted something dimly lit. I didn't want something high-key lighting and everything. I want people to feel comfortable knowing that, you're sitting down there and talking to someone. So that's why I decided to go with the brick wall, the two chairs, and just sitting down there. Yeah, simple set design. These are some of the mock-ups that I did to choose which was sort of the best one, and whatever you're seeing in the podcast ended up with that, basically. And I'm quite happy at the turnout. It might change in the future, but as for now, it works. Going over the gear, I used two Podmics running straight into my PC, straight into Audition. After I filmed the entire season, I thought to myself, do I want to do this long term? And the answer was yes. So I invested in the Rodecaster Pro 2, which I have not used in any of the podcasts yet, but this is what you're hearing it on right now with the Podmic and the Rodecaster Pro 2. This is what it sounds like, and I'm pretty excited to use it in the future. One of the biggest things that I really want to focus on is the guest experience, which is broken down into 3 parts. But the overall goal for this is comfort and reassurance, which is what I really want my guests to feel, because most people have not been in front of cameras before, being vulnerable in front of cameras, which is a bit tough for a lot of people. So I really want people to feel that they are, rest assured, I know what I'm doing. The first part is the invitation, where I ask my potential guests, do they want to be on the podcast? And more often than not, they will ask a series of questions asking what are you going to do with this podcast? How is this podcast going to run? Do you know what you're doing, basically? And again, going back to the why of why I wanted to do this podcast, I've already prepared a series of answers to tell them this is how it's going to run, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing with it. And you just have to relax, because this is what is going to happen, basically, to give them a better deciding factor if they want to be on the podcast or not. And that will be the invitation stage. The second stage will be on filming day. It's called the pre-game. Assuming that they have said yes, they will come to my house first, and then, I would greet them with water and coffee, which then becomes the props on the table, on the coffee table that you see in the podcast. From there, they will enter my room, enter the studio, get into the mood of like, this is what the set feels like. And I'll just start to catch up with them basically. The idea for this catch up is for them to feel comforted in the room first. We don't want the cameras to start rolling and they start to get anxiety attacks and stuff like that. The second one is to make sure that they are pulled out of reality, because with the world that we are coming in and suddenly we're in this room, suddenly being vulnerable, it is going to be tough. So that's why calming factor is there. The third one is to really just catch up with them, because it has been a while since I've met my friends and I just want to get an update on their life. During that portion, I'm also taking notes on what they have said, so sometimes I can add to the question list of how I want to ask them things and relate it back to what they just said offline. The last stage will be the actual filming of it, and I will brief them on this, which is what I'll tell you now, where there will be a countdown timer that will count down 2 minutes right before we start filming, and it will start to count up after it counts down. And during the first 2 minutes of rolling all the cameras and the microphones, that's when I'll get them to clap the slate. We will then go back into our positions of how we sit and prepare and everything. And once it starts counting up, we will properly the rundown of how the podcast is supposed to go. At the end, we'll finish, we'll do the outro, and that is the whole filming thing, and also the entire guest experience. The way the podcast is done is based off a Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett. The reason why I just copied that was because I didn't want to reinvent the wheel first. I didn't want to do so many things and be original. The idea is for me to just try things one by one, setting up the podcast itself, trying to talk to people itself, then flow of how it's supposed to go. It might change in the future, or it might just stay the same, but it was for me to just test it out and see how it works first in the first season. With that, so I have to say about my creative process. The idea for this video was to inspire people who already have podcasts to see how they can elevate theirs, or for people who are thinking of starting a podcast to see how fun it is to just do it. Well, that's all I have to say for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. My name is NickyAdopt, and I hope to see you guys on the next adventure. Goodbye.